All right, and we are live. Welcome to a very special episode of The Left Wing. I'm John Cooper. You'll notice TJ isn't here once again, as we said, and Nick Powers is running a little late. So I'm just going to start us off here, or else Hugh Jass is going to keep yelling at us, and I really don't want that. So, yes, lots of stuff to talk about today. We're doing a special show due to a couple scheduling conflicts. We couldn't do our normal 2-hour show today, so we're doing a redux of the left wing Q&A, and once Nick gets here, he will also be here to answer our questions as well. A lot of stuff in the news today. We have the big beautiful bill, as the Republicans and Trump are calling it, has passed the House, and it is an absolute clusterfuck for the rest of us. Zeke, thank you very much. I didn't think you'd have a problem, Zeke, but I'm glad to see that no one was upset. So anyway, we can talk about a lot today. Make sure to drop your comments and questions in the comments here on YouTube, and I'll be here to answer them. And Nick hopefully will be on soon. But either way, let's get started. We can go with the big, beautiful bill here. Zeke says if it passes, everyone is going to muerte. Well, everyone isn't going to muerte. People will survive, but a lot less people will. This is one of those bills where it basically doesn't do anything good and just hurts people. It's actually incredible how Republicans have ostensibly wanted to reduce the deficit, wanted to cut spending, want to do all of these things. And that isn't even what this bill does. It cuts spending on good things. It cuts spending on Medicaid and Medicare and SNAP benefits. It literally takes food from hungry children. But what does it do? Does it reduce the deficit? Does it reduce our spending overall? No, it does not. It is absolutely catastrophic to our economy and our general deficit as a whole. I forget exactly how much the CBO said it would raise the deficit, but it's going to reduce taxes for the wealthiest, increase taxes for the poorest, and kick millions of people off of their health care. You can make an argument, sure, that we need to reduce the deficit for whatever reasons, and we need to reduce entitlements because of that. But if you're going to do neither, while reducing taxes on the rich and increasing taxes on the poor, I'm really not sure who that's supposed to help other than the rich and Donald Trump and the people who want to privatize all of this healthcare that the government is currently providing. Colby asked, do you think Brian Thompson will happen if Medicaid and Medicare are passed in Senate and signed into law? Do I think it'll happen? So here's the thing, Colby. It's hard to predict when those sort of things are going to happen, right? Because it's not like there is some organized armed resistance movement in the United States of America who would be targeting certain people as a result of certain actions. We don't have an IRA here, right? But I do think that we are going to see more and more political violence. Maybe not as a direct result of this bill, but if you look historically, from country to country, and you try and correlate political violence or civil unrest in general with any sort of lack of wealth or having a wealth, the amount of police spending, amount of whatever spending, there's really no clear correlation except for the level of wealth inequality. Wealth inequality is easily the strongest correlated metric with with civil violence and civil unrest. This has been well documented. So will this bill directly cause someone to go out and take some extreme action on their own? I don't know. Hard for me to say. But will this bill increase wealth inequality? Well, hell yes. As I just said, we're looking at a bill which is going to lower taxes on the rich and increase taxes on the poor, while causing a lot of those poor people to lose access to their health care, to lose access to SNAP benefits, to lose access to a lot of the things that allow them to get by and put a roof over the heads of themselves and their family and put food on the table for their kids. And so when that happens, yes, there's going to be unrest. Will that unrest come in the form of political assassinations? That I cannot tell you. Will it come in the form of riots? That I cannot tell you. But will it come? Yes, it will. And that's, one of the biggest reasons for trying to reduce wealth inequality, one of the most pragmatic reasons that everyone should listen to. It's not even necessarily out of the kindness of your heart that we should be doing this. The rich should make sure that wealth inequality doesn't get too strong, because every situation in history where wealth inequality continues to expand and expand and expand and expand, it doesn't end well for the rich, for the reasons that you're alluding to, Colby. So, I'm not advocating for anything to happen. I wouldn't do that. I've always said, I even posted today on Threads and got a little bit of flack from it from people on the left, that political violence is rarely the best answer. And Nick wanted to talk about what happened last night. So I'll wait for him to get on here. I hope he's going to be able to make it. He's saying he has some technical issues. But yeah, it's going to lead to more unrest. It's going to lead to more violence. Of what kind, I can't really tell you. But that's kind of the case that we have here. Zeke says, well, if it passes, I will want to see MAGA get angry and really hold their own people accountable. Zeke, I mean, I would want to see that too. I'm every couple days here in America, I switch from being doom and gloom to going very hopeful. And when I see certain reactions from people, when I see town halls in red areas filled up with Republicans who are pissed off about this sort of thing, it gives me hope, right? And I hope that they will be held accountable. And I do think I would be surprised if we did not see a large rejection of this agenda come the midterms. But that's not really what I think you're talking about, Zeke. Because in my mind, the only way that I'm going to feel comfortable is not just, hey, a sweeping blue wave for Democrats. It's an utter destruction of the Republican Party. That's the only thing that would make me feel comfortable moving forward at all in this country, that maybe we're headed in the right direction. Because if it's like a, bunch of 45, 55 races, that's just not good enough. It's not as much of an admonishment as we need, because that means most people didn't realize what was happening, right? Most people still support all of this bullshit. And to tell us a little bit more about the bullshit going on, we have none other than Nick out here.
Hey,
today.
I'm doing all right. How are you guys?
Doing well. It's just me and you today. TJ currently in the sky.
Forgot about that.
Did not make it, but yeah, I started here. Got us kicked off. I know you're having some technical difficulties, but appreciate you persevering and getting on here anyway.
Yeah, no, thanks. Sorry, I ended up just using my my laptop's webcam because I couldn't get my other camera to work. So
you look just as beautiful even with a worse camera.
Thanks.
But yeah, so yeah, we're going to be kind of doing a little more casual show. You're usually here for either our normal show where we have the standard topics, or our live streams of debates and all of that jazz. But it's been a while, Nick. I think it's been a couple months. I feel like we definitely had you
election
on
night.
We
had one time since election.
I thought so, and that was a couple months ago at this point. So yeah. I guess the first question I want to ask you, we have a Nick Powers fan here.
Love your username.
Huge ass is probably our favorite username. We also have I've never given a woman an orgasm, also one of my favorite usernames of our audience. But
yes,
yeah, so it's been a couple months since the last time you were on. I was just talking about how like I oscillate back and forth between hope and doom. Where are you sitting right now?
After the news of today and the passage of the big, beautiful bill, I'm sitting more towards doom. But I've still got a little bit of hope because the Senate seems to be a little bit more responsible than the House of Representatives right now. So maybe, that won't go through. Also, the courts have been blocking Donald Trump a whole lot recently. So that's given me a lot of hope.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of which, the Harvard...
1 second. Oh, my God.
But I'll just take it from there. But
I'm so sorry. More technical difficulties somehow.
More technical difficulties. Can you hear me, Nick?
Why? I made sure that they were charged. Okay, I'm going to put you.
All right. Can you hear me now, Nick?
Can I hear you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Nope, I sure can't. Oh my God, why? I am so sorry.
It's okay. We can hear you. I'm going to keep talking here. Introduce the subject.
Now it should work.
Rhonda, can you hear me, Major Tom? I like Ron DeSantis. Look at that. Cool.
There we go.
There we go. There we go. Nick is back. So yeah, you're just alluding to the judges, and I agree. The courts have been holding up a little bit better than I might have thought they would. I'm happy that he hasn't, like, he's rejected the courts to some level, but he hasn't pulled a full-on Andrew Jackson and said, let them enforce it. I'm very worried about that. That's probably my biggest fear. But so far, he seems beholden to the courts somewhat, and the courts are rapidly escalating the speed at which they're working to prevent him from doing some of his more overt actions. What do you think is, like, stopping him from pulling an Andrew Jackson? That's kind of been my question.
Currently,
that's been around my head.
From all the research that I've been seeing, virtually nothing, except the risk of losing Republican support in Congress. Which, if he pulls an Andrew Jackson, that could be the line that's drawn in Congress, where even the most conservative Republicans will say, "I can't support you anymore" after you've done that.
Yeah, but I mean, that you need a lot more than that, though. Like, you don't need just like him to lose you need to have a impeachable majority in order for that to even matter.
Well, I mean, it depends, because he's still getting legislation passed in Congress right now. Even if he loses, 10, 15 Republicans in the House of Representatives, that's still going to make a huge difference in the House. If he loses 5 senators, that's going to make a huge difference. And, I mean, and honestly, if he straight up defies the courts, pulls an Andrew Jackson, fights against all of the courts, including the Supreme Court, that is a huge move. That points to the end of democracy. You know what I mean? And so that, I honestly think that would be a big enough move to scare not just a few Republicans. I think that would be a big enough move to scare a lot of them, probably the majority of them.
So here's the thing, Nick. Like, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I don't mean to be doomerist, right? I think doomerism is maybe our most fatal poison that we can partake in at this moment in time. There always needs to be a path to victory, a reason to have hope. And we are certainly, and I say that, we are certainly not very close to the point where all hope is lost, right? But we are approaching it. And the thing that I fear is, if he does that, what does he need to Congress for anymore? Like, if he's just going to say, enforce it, what does he need? He's already passed less legislation, I think, than any president up to this point in his term, which, again, is a small sample size relatively, but he's been ruling by executive order.
The bills have been considerably larger, so we have to keep that in mind. The legislation that he's passed has been a lot more impactful than previous presidents in the first few months of their terms. So there is that too.
What do you mean? Because I don't mean to challenge him. I genuinely asking, in terms of the legislation passed, not executive order, not
right. I mean,
restructuring of the executive branch offices. What has he passed so far in Congress?
I mean, the legislation. I mean, not having gotten through Congress yet. Oh my God, Excel is loading. Give me 1 second. Let me pull some of them up.
And by the way, guys, if you have not experienced Nick Powers, he's all about his data. He's all about his spreadsheets. If you have any questions about anything political data related or roller coaster related, Nick Powers is your guy. So make sure to ask him while we have him here.
Thanks for that call out. Yeah. I mean, one example is the NORA Act of 2025, right? Which that would actually stop federal courts from blocking executive actions, even if they're deemed unconstitutional. That's a huge bill. That's a very impactful bill. Another one, the Lake and Riley Act, allows the United States to detain migrants without proof of a crime. Like that's a bill. Like that's not just Donald Trump evading Supreme Court rulings. That's or an executive order. That's a bill that they're trying to get through. And that's another one that if we're not allowing due process to migrants, then none of us have due process. Those are just those two examples are two huge, like that is sweeping legislation just in those two bills. That is so, like, those two bills are extremely impactful to our democracy, more so than any president in modern history. And it doesn't stop there. There are several, and some of them have gone like unnoticed, because there's so much to keep up with.
Yep. Just the fire hose tactic of they can't focus on everything, so let's hit them with all of it at once. It is very upsetting, but I feel like the Laken Riley Act specifically is kind of an example of what I'm talking about. Where, okay, let's say he doesn't get it passed, he suspends habeas corpus. Now what? It's basically it's not the same thing, but in terms of how scared we need to be of it, it kind of accomplishes the same thing of he can detain you, you can't move to the courts. Who cares if it's legal or not? He's going to do it.
That's true. But one of the things, though, is he is, at least right now, even though he's talking about running for another term, which is unconstitutional right now, all of the things that he's doing without Congress can just be immediately changed by the next president. If he gets impeached and J.D. Vance becomes president, and if he gets enough pressure, if J.D. Vance gets enough pressure and they say, hey, we're going to impeach you unless you change these, then he has to change them, or else he risks getting impeached. All of these things are easily, all of these things are easily overthrown when acts of Congress are not.
And that's why it kind of points me towards, hey, he doesn't plan to leave. He does.
Well, yes.
And I guess as terrifying of a scenario as that is, the silver lining of it is he's old and not very healthy. And maybe we kind of that problem solves itself. But it's interesting you brought up the JD Vance thing, because I am on the record saying I think there is a larger chance than a lot of people are realizing that Donald Trump does get impeached and J.D. Vance takes power in the same sort of restricted sort of setting where Congress is calling the shots because, they just killed a president. They can kill you too, and we're just going to put the next person up. Do you agree with that? Because I think it can get that bad. If it gets that bad, I
absolutely agree with that. I think right now he still has Republican support, but if he continues down this path, if the economy gets worse, then that's going to, a lot of the Republican Congress, a lot of Congress in general, but especially Republican Congress, they profit off of the stock markets. If their investments start drying up, then they're going to lash out against Trump. And that's just, the beginning of it. If there's a lot of things that can get worse. If Republicans voters come out and call their representatives and say, hey, I've been voting for you for decades, I'm not going to do that anymore, and the midterms are still coming up, we still have the midterms, then they still might vote against Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is rapidly losing support when it comes to the polls.
I think a good thing to point out is that Trump's entire claim to power isn't necessarily even the fact that he's president. Like, obviously, being the president grants you a lot of power, but his power is that he has a death grip over the Republican Party. He holds the ability to essentially primary any of them. And while the primary challengers that he supports tend to have a losing record in the general, that doesn't really matter to the Republican incumbent,
right? Exactly, because they're going to lose anyway.
To hold that sway, but as soon as he can't anymore, it's kind of like, were you privy to the man versus gorilla discourse, the 100 men versus gorilla?
Yes,
it's like at the beginning of that fight, There's going to be quite a few men that get torn apart, right? But
Right.
eventually, the mass of humanity that outweighs the gorilla by thousands of pounds is probably going to win that battle through sheer attrition. And it's going to get very violent. It's going to look really bad for the people until it doesn't, until suddenly it doesn't, until the gorilla tires out and it's over way quicker than you would have thought when that gorilla was mashing the first person. And I feel like that's what we could see, I think in a good future pathway of suddenly he loses that ability to win in the primary. I think 2026 is going to be a real test for him because it's not even, I do think Democrats are going to sweep and gain back both chambers of Congress. God, hopefully that happens. But what's going to be the even bigger test is how many, because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think having an impeachable majority in Congress for the Democrats is off the table in 2026, depending on how bad things go. But even if it doesn't, if it goes bad enough that Donald Trump no longer holds that sway over Republican primaries, suddenly the entire power dynamic that we've been used to for the past 8 years at this point is gone. And we're living in a new world.
And we have to keep in mind that a lot of old guard Republicans have come out and, even before Donald Trump won the election again, like Mitt Romney came out against Donald Trump. A lot of old guard Republicans have come out, and even though they've voted with his policies, they've come out criticizing him. I don't think that that's too far away, especially if the Democrats win in the midterms, because then it only takes a couple of them to a couple of Republicans to sway.
Exactly.
And especially in the Senate, I guess we'll have to see in the Senate, honestly. But in the Senate, like the biggest hurdle that we've had to get through, because Donald Trump has been impeached twice, is conviction. Now, of course, I believe that there's grounds for it. But if Donald Trump loses, it's a third of the Senate that's up for re-election in the midterms. If Donald Trump loses more sway than we think he might, than we think he might could in the Senate races, which again aren't gerrymandered, they're all popular vote. We could easily see a conviction shortly after the midterms.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Depending on how that goes, you could theoretically. It depends on how the next couple, 2 years, not 2 years, year and a half go. It's kind of hard to predict at this point. But if it gets bad, if he loses that sway over the Republican Party before then, you might see Republicans running on, I'm going to impeach Trump. Right. Like we're going to return the Republican Party back to its small government and freedom roots. Have the Freedom Caucus people kind of take over the MAGA crowd. And there's problems with that too, Nick. Let's be very clear. I don't like those guys very much either, but it's certainly better than I prefer libertarians to fascists. I'll put it that way.
Right. Yes. And I mean, even though I'm with you, there are so many problems. Like, these are not the good guys that will be coming out against Donald Trump. They're still conservative Republicans, but there are still even more bonuses than I think, we're talking about right now. There's still the fact that the Republican Party will be split, just like the Democrats were in the 2024 election, which can give us, not just in the midterms, but in the 2028 election, considerable ground.
Yeah, for sure. And I do want to hear your thoughts on the Democrats and kind of where they are, what they're doing now, and what direction you think they're going to go and what direction you think they should go, because those are often two different things. But before we get to that, this is our Q&A show. So definitely, if you guys have any questions for us, drop them in the comments. We have a very important question for you, Nick. This comes from Zeke. Do you do shiny hunting?
Wait, hold on. Is that a Pokemon related question?
It is a Pokemon related question.
Oh my God. I haven't. I started playing Pokemon Go again like 2 months ago, actually. But then I dropped off because I've gotten busy. I would like to do shiny hunting. but I also suck at Pokemon Go. So I guess the answer is no, but I wanna.
That's the summer of Pokemon Go, Nick, was the greatest that is the peak of humanity. It has been all downhill from there. But
Yeah.
that summer, I remember I was in Central Park and a Lapras showed up, and there was like just everyone's running. And we're just like, we're gonna run over there because I'm sure there's a cool Pokemon. And that everyone was like, what is? I don't know. I can't wait to find out. And it's just like I've never had so much genuine social interaction with total strangers in a single summer than I ever did that one.
Right. And everybody, no matter what team were you on, was really accepting. I was actually on yellow, which, you know, we all ate glue, but yeah, even as somebody on yellow who struggled to find somebody on the same team, everybody was still super nice. And it felt honestly, it felt like the world was getting better just because of Pokemon Go.
I mean, as much as that sounds silly, everything we know about the way that just like having social interaction in a real setting improves your mental health, improves. I mean, I talk about this all the time, Nick, of like, if you look at prejudice, you know, people with strong prejudices, most of the time it's because the people they are prejudiced against, they don't actually see in real life. When you force, you know, desegregation, you know, I would call that whatever you want. I don't mean like legal segregation, but when you force integration, when you force a lot of people of different backgrounds to be around each other, prejudice drops. You know, it's one of the reasons, you know, people say like, oh, colleges indoctrinate you to believe all these liberal ideas. And it's like
wow, you just, yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, to a certain extent, yes, reality has a well-known liberal bias. So if you're teaching facts about the world and you consider that liberal, then yeah, sure, whatever. But like the other massive thing is you just get exposed to so many different kinds of people from all over the world, from different walks of life, that you don't get if you're growing up in a, you know, small town America. And that opens people's eyes up to a lot of the obvious lies that, you know, conservatives tend to believe.
Right. It's, you know, and it's not, it, like you said, it goes beyond just seeing other viewpoints. It goes into getting to know different groups of people and seeing that your viewpoints were wrong about them.
Exactly. So anyway, looping this back. Speaking of people who are wrong a lot of the time, the Democratic Party, what has been your take on their job performance thus far in the Trump presidency?
Ooh, I have a lot of complicated feelings about that. So I've been trying to stay hopeful. If you follow Ariella Elm, she's wonderful about posting what the Democrats are doing literally every day. And there have been a lot of things that I wouldn't have seen. You know, just daily wins, Democrats actually doing the work that we're asking them to. Do I think that they could be doing more? Yeah, I obviously. Cory Booker just voted for Kushner.
Yeah, the Kushner guy.
Yeah,
I forget his first name.
Yeah, I think Jared. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, and why? What? How he's the only Democrat to do that, but still, and like this is, you know, Cory Booker is actually a Democrat that I follow, that I like, and that really surprised me. So it's more complicated than just, do I think the Democrats are doing a good job? I think there's a lot of nuances, and not just on the individual Democrat, but also their specific weaknesses, like all of them. We can look at AOC and say, oh, nobody's AOC, you know, nobody's Bernie Sanders. And yeah, that's true. But we also have to look at the whole picture, because not every state is New York and Vermont, you know? So we have to look to see if they, oh yeah, Charles Kushner. Yeah. Jared's his son.
Jared's his son. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we have to. I have to look at what each representative is doing in accordance with what their voters want, not just what does the internet want as a whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is a lot more hopeful than I thought, but still they could do better.
So I have a lot of sympathy for that position because there is a lot of good that does get done that doesn't get talked about enough. And as I said, doomerism are the greatest poison that we could be taking right now. And I don't want to lean into the narrative that the Democrats are doing nothing. They are doing a lot
Right.
of things that are very, very, very important. If they weren't doing them, you would be a lot more hurt right now. So, like, yes, that's good. But I kind of land on the side of the fence that says the Democrats did nuanced good stuff during the Biden administration, and that got us here. So, looking at what they're doing now, if the answer is, oh, guys, look, they're doing a lot of nuanced good stuff that isn't getting talked about no, that's not good enough. Like, it's not going to be good enough. And as much as I want them to keep doing that, it's not even so much a results thing. It's not like, hey, what are you physically accomplishing? My criticism is more of the mindset of the party in general.
I agree with that.
They seem to think that we should be operating under business as usual standards. I think a great example
that
of
is
this,
changing, luckily.
it's changing slowly.
Yes,
but it's changing.
Slow, but it is changing.
But it should have changed the moment they called Donald Trump a fascist. I've said this a million times. You can't call Trump a fascist and then act as if he's a normal president. Because if you do, suddenly fascist loses all meaning to people. And it kind of already does. But like, people look at that and go, well, you're obviously a bullshitter still. And I'm not going to trust you any more than that bullshitter over there. I think Cory Booker is a great example of that too, where he goes on this, honestly, I liked the speech. I liked the filibuster. There were a lot of people on our side of the aisle that were being like, he's funded by AIPAC. This is performative. It's not actually accomplishing anything. And I went out there and I said, no, I like this. I like that he's doing this, even if you're not actually physically accomplishing something, which I think this is actually a good counterpoint to your point, as much as it's not arguing with it, of it doesn't accomplish anything. It didn't prevent anything from passing, but it gained momentum. It captured the news cycle, it captured people's attention, and people associated a positive thing with Democrats. To me, that is even more important. I hate to say that because like the actual work is actually more important, but in terms of the winning the larger game, you got to win your battles. But in terms of winning the war, people need to associate the Democratic Party with good things. They need the vibes, because people don't vote on policy as much as we want them to. Clearly, that's not the case, or else Donald Trump would have lost because his policies in a blind test got trounced by Kamala's policy, right? So in my mind, if Cory Booker is going to go do that, and then I'm going to go out there and defend him for doing that, when he then nominates Kushner, whose name I already forgot, Charles Kushner.
Yeah, Charles Kushner. Yeah.
What did you do it for? Like, to me, that just signals, more of the same. More of the same. Democrats going out there, talking a big game, and then not backing it up when it comes time to say fuck you to their donors.
I think as content creators, it's, and I'm not disagreeing with your point. I completely agree with your point that the narrative needs to change. But I do think one of my jobs as a content creator is to spread awareness about the fact that in Cory Booker's case, nominating Kushner or voting for Kushner, he was the only Democrat to do that. And I think that's an important message to say. Yes, it is appropriate to reach out and be like, why did you do that? It's important to call him out and say and call him out for being the only Democrat to do that. But a good message would be the Democrats disagreed with him. And the content creator, that's part of my job. Everybody sees what the actual ratio of people that say, oh, Cory Booker, he stands for all Democrats. Like we supported Cory Booker. He did this thing. And now the Democrats are back to just being supporting fascists, but that's not true. Not even from Kushner.
So, go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're good. I was pretty much done.
So that brings up a good follow-up question in my mind. So how do I put this? You're right that the Democrats didn't all do that. It was Booker, right? But again, that's not what got through to the narrative. The narrative was a negative thing about Cory Booker, and I didn't see the Democrats, as much as they didn't do it with him, none of them attacked him. None of them held his feet to the fire and said, "What the fuck are you doing?" And that's what I would have preferred.
Right.
You hear the term thrown out a lot called circular firing squad. And in my mind, now is the time for a circular firing squad. I think it needs to be dog eat dog, survival of the fittest. You are either the best possible person in your position doing everything you can to fight fascism, or I'm going to take you down and we're going to replace you with someone who can do your job better. That is an aggressive stance, and I know that. But that, in my heart of hearts, is how I feel. If you look at any other high-stakes organization, you look at the NFL, general managers have an average shelf life of 3.5 years. And the NFL doesn't have as high stakes as the U.S. government. So why should it be treated any differently? That's the way I view it. Do you think that there needs to be more friction in the Democratic Party right now, or less?
I think that's another complicated question. And I, just like
Nick,
what
it's supposed to be a complicated question, Nick.
I know, right? I'm just
you're supposed to give a hot take.
So I sympathize with that view, because that's what I want. Like, that's what would be easier for me to see is, every single person who does something that we royally disagree with, just, hey, no, you're going to be out if you, like, not only if you continue doing this, but since you did it, we don't understand it. You're aligning yourself with fascists. You're out. That the narrative is easier to follow there. It gets a lot of attention. It gets people involved. It gets people going, but it also doesn't gain votes. And right now, the biggest thing that we need to fight fascism is people butts in seats. As much as I fucking hate it, the biggest thing that we need is butts in seats. And if we keep firing squatting everybody except for the perfect candidates for people on the internet and not just people who vote for them, we're not going to have anybody left to vote for. And it also, we would start losing people. Like, if we decided, hey, we're never going to vote for Cory Booker again, we lose a name that's reputable. We, like, when he comes on the ticket, we lose. When his re-election comes up and we decide that we're going to primary him and somebody else wins, we lose that incumbent advantage, and we start losing people in Congress. Now, there is an appropriate amount to do that, and I do think that right now, when it comes to Congress, we can do that. Like, we can do that a little bit. We're a lot right now because we're far enough away from the midterms that we can get all of these goods and evils sorted. But I think it's important to do that with the asterisk that come November, we're voting fascist versus not fascist. And if the problem in 2024 was we didn't have that asterisk. So many of us thought that Kamala Harris was just as bad as Donald Trump. And we were so mad that we didn't get a full primary, even though we don't primary incumbents for presidents. We were so mad at what Biden was doing, even though he wasn't the person running, that we forgot the asterisk that if Kamala lost, we'd have fascism.
So I'm interested, Nick, because you're the data guy, right? As much as I do some data stuff, you do way more data stuff than me. And I've been looking because in 2020, I remember Pew Research did a poll, and they found that the progressive side of the Democratic Party, people who self-identified as progressives, had the highest rates of voting, which dissuaded a lot from this narrative that leftists hold out their vote. And to me, that also confirmed my priors of the people who are most engaged tend to be the people on the farther sides of the aisle, whichever direction you want to go in. The people who are more engaged tend to have less moderate views for just, I think, reasons that should be obvious to everyone. I haven't seen that kind of data come out about 2024. I haven't seen any sort
There
of.
has been.
But yeah, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I'm wondering if you're privy to information I don't have.
I was meaning to do a video about this recently, but I haven't gotten all of my research in. I have the article pulled up from Pew Research Center, but it's going to take a lot to go through. And you're right that, okay, so let's start with what you were saying before. I can't go through this article right now. Not while we're live. I thought for a second, I was like, maybe coincidentally, I can just grab like a few bits of it.
That's why it's nice when there's a third person. So when they're talking, you can just like be researching your next point.
Right. But I will say regarding those previous articles, when it comes to Pew Research Center, and I mean, a lot of these kinds of researchers who look up demographics based on belief systems. Progressives is a big bubble to put people in. And a lot of online leftists don't even like to label themselves as progressives because they like to separate themselves from liberals. Liberals are also a part of that conservative group when it comes to Pew Research. We have to keep that in mind.
Liberals are part of that conservative group?
Or no, I'm sorry, part of the progressive group when it comes to Pew Research.
Got you.
And so when we can't necessarily look at previous elections and say, oh, Pew Research says that progressives are the most active politically when it comes to voter turnout. And that means that these online leftists are showing up, because those two aren't the same thing.
Yeah, and that's true. But I also think the online leftist is way smaller of a demographic. And even then,
100%.
Even of the online leftists, I think that group, of which, would you self-identify as an online leftist?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah. But like, of that group, and again, I'm obviously biased by my own position, but I talk to a lot of these people. We bring them on this show. Most of them did vote for Kamala, even if they were like, yeah, no, they're aiding a genocide. It's still the path of least resistance. The gets us closest to our objectives is Kamala, and that's why we're going to vote for her. That was the predominant feeling that I got from talking to at least content creator level online leftists. Of course, there's people jumping in my comments every time I post about it, calling me some, neoliberal shill, siding with the fascists and everything. But, I get crazy comments from people from all across the fucking spectrum. I also get crazy comments from fucking liberal moderates just as often. It's just they don't get called crazy as much, because they're a little more normalized. But like, I feel like that's a symptom of being online more than it's an accurate reflection of people who share our beliefs. And unfortunately, I don't have the data to prove that. I just have my anecdotal experience, which is why I'm very upset that I haven't been able to find it. But do you feel like the leftist holdout vote did contribute to Kamala's loss? Because I would say it didn't, or at least in any way relative to the liberal moderate holdout vote, which came from a much larger demographic. And we saw a lot of people stay home who voted for Biden in 2020.
Right. Okay. So I want to clarify, like, before I answer that, I do want to clarify a point real quick. And I think that this was understood, but I just want to make it clear.
Yeah.
When I brought up the fact that that progressives are a giant group, and that was a rebuttal to the point that it wasn't necessarily saying that your point was false. It was more of agreeing with you that we don't have the data to support it.
Yes.
So that very well could be the case. Given what I know about the 2024 election, it seems like the holdout vote was across a lot of spectrums. Now, we have to, and one of the things to keep in mind is, like me anecdotally, I want to say, oh yeah, the online leftists, the holdout vote, people are saying that, Kamala was worse for a lot of that's my gut, right? That's the people that I argue with on the internet. That doesn't actually mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
When I actually when you look at the data from when I looked at the data that I have looked at so far, which is not complete, which is why I have not made a video about it. I think that there's a lot of groups in this holdout vote, the people that didn't show up, and there's a lot of different reasons. We have to keep in mind conservatives are one of those. There are so many conservatives that voted for Biden in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
That either voted for Trump or didn't vote in 2024.
That's fair.
And so, yeah.
And by the way, guys, he's not talking about the liberal moderates as they might be factually described as conservatives. He's talking about
I am literally talking about, yes, people who predominantly vote Republican. Mm-hmm. But Donald Trump was too conservative for them. And Donald Trump also, they didn't like the response to that Donald Trump had to COVID. Because a lot of these people are still they understand certain things, like vaccines are good. Mm-hmm. Not all conservatives are these crazy MAGA, nothing is real, everything's a conspiracy people. Mm-hmm. A lot of them voted for Biden and didn't vote for Kamala. And that's a huge group. And while I think it's I don't know. I think I just don't have enough information yet to answer that question, because this holdout vote came from so many different places. A smaller percentage of conservatives and liberals, I would say, had a holdout vote, but that accounted for a lot more people, total people, the total number of people who didn't come to the election in 2024. A greater percentage of them were either conservative Democrats or conservatives in general. Mm-hmm. But as far as what percentage of each category, what percentage of leftists, what percentage of progressives, what percentage of conservative Democrats, what percentage of conservatives, I don't know. And I do think I agree with the fact that leftists by themselves weren't once saying Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. But I feel like that's a dangerous path to go down for a lot of different reasons. A lot of people want to say that because they want to talk about how it wasn't online leftists' fault. It wasn't progressives' fault. If it came to us, then Kamala would have won. But we also have to keep in mind that if we say that their vote didn't matter, if we say that the online leftist vote was so small that it didn't actually matter in this election, then we also are saying that Democrats don't have to care about their vote. And I think that's a dangerous path to go down. I think that conversation needs to be a lot more nuanced than I've been seeing.
I really like that framing of the question, Nick, because it is a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. the way that I look at it is voters are never at fault. You can,
and that's
can
one of the things that we always disagree on.
Yes, but in terms of what individual actions are going to have the most impact on a win or a loss of a campaign, yeah, you can look at a large group of people and say, yeah, these people are the problem. But at the end of the day, I think it is the candidate's responsibility to win those people over. And I think one of the things that I will say, at least some Democrats seem to be learning from this, is that the election never stops.
Right.
I think that after we won 2020, there was this big, finally, yes, Orange Man gone. We can breathe again. We're back to normal. We're going to get through this pandemic and we're going to just sail off into the sunset. And that mentality, I think, was ruinous. And mm-hmm. I think one of the things that does give me some hope, at least with, some leaders within our party, not all of them. I have my qualms with several of them, but yes, there are definitely examples of, hey, these people are understanding that the campaign for 2028 began on November 7th, 2024.
That's
And
right.
that is the mentality that needs to be had at all times. That being said, because I do want to circle back to Trump, I don't want to spend most of the show talking about Democrats, but who's your guy or guys or gals right now that you're like on the Democrat side, you want to shout out, they're doing a bang up job. People should be looking to them for leadership.
I'm actually not even going to shout out Democrats in general.
Okay.
I want to shout out Ariella Elm for
Okay.
shouting these Democrats out, because there are so many. There are 400 members in the House. We can't shout out all of them, in one plate, but she can, because she talks about all the Democrats every day that are doing something. So I know that that's a cop out. I'm very aware of that, but I do want to shout out her channel.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do you follow her, John?
I don't. This is the first time hearing of her. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna link you to her after this, I guess. But her screen name is Ariella Elm.
Okay.
Or that's her name.
Are you a mutual of hers? Do you?
Yeah, I do know her. I talk to her sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, and that's that is her screen name too. Ariella.elm. I can put it in the chat.
Cool.
Maybe not. Maybe I can't put it in the chat. That's good. Hold on. Nope, it's gonna make me sign into YouTube. But I can send it in the private chat, and you can copy and paste it if you wanted to.
All right, let's do it. I'll copy and paste it. But okay, no, I like that a lot. You're in terms of influencers I shout out a lot. You are one of them, Nick.
I appreciate it. I mean, you are as well. Both you and TJ.
Short form video. I really like what you do. I always say I think that we come from a similar mindset of we like to take complex ideas, concepts, arguments, and break them down using language that the average person will be able to understand. And I think that is a very valuable skill that needs to be done more from everyone involved. There's obviously room for academic language and study and research, and that needs to still exist. But I think a lot of people who are smart and able to comprehend these concepts and ideas and arguments need to start talking in more normal people speak.
100%.
Because I think that's a big part of the problem we have in America right now is that expertise is siloed and people aren't getting it.
Right.
Anyway.
You actually have a shout out in your comment section, Zeke. Yep, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. It's 100% true.
I appreciate it, guys. I appreciate it. I've been making less. It is not. I've been on Threads a lot. Is where I've been making a lot of content just because it's easier.
Yeah. And I mean, same.
The problem I'm having, and this is just talking shop, is like I struggle to do the sort of breakdowns that I'm used to because it's like, what is the fucking other side of this argument? Like, what am I even supposed to be breaking down here? Tariffs bad. When we lock people up and deport them for their speech, that's bad. What more video do you want? Like, what am I? Why should I dedicate a couple hours to making this video when essentially it just boils down to free speech, good, due process. We need it. Like, how many more times can I make this argument? Like,
no, I'm the same way. That's I'm sure that you've had this issue too, John. When I've been when I have been making videos, and it's about nuanced topics, the topics have been a lot more in depth than normal because the ones that do need to be broken down and aren't just obviously that's bad, require a lot of evidence. I took 13 hours to make one of my recent videos, counting the research, the editing, and everything. So I've been posting considerably less because these things are just taking longer, and it's a lot harder to find something to talk about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is the Q&A or a Q&A. So Zeke did ask a question I wanted to address, and then I do want to close with the Harvard thing, if you have the time.
Right.
So Zeke says, what's up with some people being fine being in the middle? Kind of bugs me how some content creators shit on the far right and have the audacity to say they aren't crazy like the far left. So this is something me and TJ say a lot, is like, as much as some of the crazies on the far right are worse morally and like in reality, if their policies come to pass, we respect them a little bit more because at least they're being fucking consistent. At least they're taking this ideology and like sticking with it, instead of, in the people in the middle are kind of forced to take a lot of incoherent stances in order to avoid the extremes. And that's why I kind of alluded to earlier, is that the longer you're in this, the more engaged you get, the more rigid might not be the right word, but the more thought out and defined your stances and principles are, and that tends to push you away from the middle just by default. And I do you have the same sort of feeling there, Nick, where it's just like the more you're in this, the more you kind of realize that the middle is the worst place to be?
Right. No, I completely agree. I mean, there are people that I understand where they're coming from in the middle, but it's very few and far between. And most of the time, they don't end up staying in the middle because the Overton window shifts. You know, if they're really true to their beliefs, then they're going to end up at the left or the right at some point in time. And if they're changing while the middle changes, then they're not really true to their beliefs.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people and one of the things that I do respect about even the people, like the really loud leftists in my comment section, the few that I don't agree with on a lot of the points that they made, which I agree with. You know, I'm a leftist. I agree with almost all of the points that leftists make in my comment section. One of the things about them is they're like, when you look at leftism, viewpoints are always changing because with nuance, with events, with context, things progress. That's really what progressivism is. And moderates, their goal is to just stay in the middle. They do not care about ethics, morals. They don't necessarily care about what their actions are doing. They just want to listen to both sides and find themselves somewhere in the middle. That's not true for all of them. I know a few that's not true for, but I do agree with those commenters on a general principle when you look at moderates.
There's a reason that the phrase, the centrist believes every war was unjustified except the current one, is true throughout history. And because a lot of people do normalize their views to not stray too far away from the center of the Overton window, because it's hard. It is the path of least resistance, is to be in the middle. And that is the path that most people take, and again, obviously I don't do that with my politics, but there are areas in my life where I take the path of least resistance 1,000%. I'm sure you do too, Nick. Everyone does, because we can't take the hard path with everything. There's too much bullshit in life. And so I don't necessarily condemn those people. I think in this particular moment in time, there's a little stronger condemnation than there usually is, but I don't.
It's hard with fascism. Yes.
Yeah. Like 10 years ago, it would have been much less condemnable. Now I'm starting to be like, okay, bro, you got to pick a side of this fence. You can't be riding this during this particular time.
Right. But, yeah. Yeah. I will say, I mean, we both wanted to talk about Harvard. If we can wrap that up in a couple minutes, then we totally can. But I'm also down to do a collab at some point or join you for another Q&A at some other point in time.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it. I mean, we can wrap it up real quick in a few minutes on Harvard. We're actually woefully behind in our guest scheduling right now, so we'll bring you back on real soon if you have the time for it. But yeah, Harvard. So I think that this is it's not a very important one, right? Like as much as like it is bad, it's not one that affects like the big beautiful bill where it can just destroy so much. It's pretty targeted, but what it represents to me is so harmful. Of, hey, we're just going to use this lever of power to punish a university strictly for not falling in line, not even doing anything wrong, not doing anything bad, just not doing what we want them to. And we are going to harm thousands of students because they're international students and we don't give a shit about them as much as we do American students. And this is coming from the people who just spent the last 4 years bitching and moaning about DEI admissions not being merit-based. Well, motherfucker, what do you call this? It's literally you're saying these people can't attend Harvard who deserve to be in Harvard because of their nationality.
Right.
Not that I expect these people to be consistent, Nick. But
no,
it does infuriate me, this one, a little bit more than most. Do you feel the same way that I do here?
100%. I think this is one of the many situations that we're on the same page on. In order to be against DEI and to be for what Donald Trump, to be on Donald Trump's side against Harvard, you cannot have consistent beliefs. You just can't. And also, I agree with you that this sets a dangerous precedent, not only because of what it entails to Harvard students, but also that precedent can stop international students from coming here, and it can also the propaganda that it helps perpetuate can harm international students while they're here.
Which also harms domestic students because they are enriched.
Yeah, exactly.
Enriched by the international students.
Yes, 100%.
All right. Well, we do have to wrap it up, Nick. We will have you back on very soon because it has been way too long since you've been on the show. And it was honestly nice to just have a hour-long chat with you as opposed to going topic-based. But yeah, cool. So thank you guys very much for watching. By the way, Nick, you are a demanded guest of ours. Whenever we say, hey, Nick Powers is coming on, we always have a cheers for you in the comments. So
thank you guys. I appreciate that.
We will bring you back on soon. We will be back next week on Tuesday at 6 Thursday, just being TJ for a Q&A show. And then back again on the following Thursday. Thank you very much. This has been The Left Wing. See you guys later.